What is up, my friends? Brian here, and today I am testing out a few different lenses, kind of exploring my YouTube setup for trying to decide how I want to do it going forward. I'm starting on a really interesting lens, the Soviet-made Helios 44-2 58mm f2.0 lens, and right now I'm at f2. This is a fully manual lens, so hopefully I set the focus correctly. We can see it doesn't take much for me to get in or out of focus. So if I was going to use this lens on my setup, this is going to be I've got to be really stationary, very conscious of where I am, and we'll kind of see. But it's an interesting lens because it's got a lot of interesting character. You can see in some of probably right over here, you can see some of the background blur looks a little bit different than what you might get otherwise. And we can see kind of what it does with flaring. If I can figure out how to get this guy. All right, so yeah, we can see it's a lens. It does a lot of really interesting soft flares. We've got this light turned fairly low. We can turn it, that's basically as low as it can go. And then if we want to really crank that up to really see this lens, if you flare it, it really washes out. So that's kind of an interesting sort of look that you can get with this lens if you want. So some of the advantages to this lens, sometimes I feel like manual focus just is better, even if maybe I go in and out of focus a little, as long as my focus point is pretty darn close to accurate, because you don't get weird pulsing or strange focus distracting the audience. You've got the focus. It is what it is. Of course, the risk of that is you shoot a whole video and you're out of focus, which could totally happen here. If you're seeing this video, it probably didn't. I probably got it at least pretty close. But the other disadvantage of this lens is it is 58 millimeters. I'm shooting in a fairly small space. The lens is about halfway across my room, so this isn't necessarily an overly practical setup for me to just have up all the time, unless maybe I rearrange my apartment, make a different kind of shooting location, maybe in my living room. That's something that I might do if I really like this setup, is move some of these shelves, move some of these things, find a cool corner in some place outside of my bedroom, because I'm literally in my bedroom. My bed is just off to the side there. And then I've got my computer off over there. I've got a whiteboard, my closet, all that stuff. So literally you're just seeing a small portion of my room. But obviously it's not necessarily the most practical setup for the space that I have, even though it looks pretty cool. Before I actually switch lenses, I did want to throw on the Black Pro Mist 1/4 power filter. This should make the image a little bit softer. It makes the flares even a little bit more. Obviously, this is a pretty flary lens, so this might push the look quite a bit. So we will see. We're going to get this guy in frame. And this is the lowest power, and we can see that with just the normal lens, we don't get this kind of flaring. But then if we bring it up, holy freaking moly, this is all the way flared up. This is ridiculous washout. We'd never have a shot like this, but just for fun to see kind of what it does. And then we'll go ahead and put the light back where it should be. That's, I think that's a little brighter than I had it, maybe. There we go. But yeah, so that's basically that setup. That's probably what I would do. It helps kind of hide skin imperfections in theory. I don't know how you can, I'm sure you can still see my tired eyeballs, but hopefully it, softens things up just a little bit, adds, flares just a little bit. There's probably some interesting things that I could do to make this setup pop and take advantage of that a little bit better. But yeah, that's just kind of a a quick test on that, I did want to throw the Pro Mist filter on each lens because I do plan to use the Pro Mist filter, but I also, just for the sake of, more clinical testing, also have shots without it on. So now let's actually go to our next lens. And this is the 50mm Sigma Art f1.4. I've got it at f2. I'll let you know what each lens's aperture is at. I'm going to adjust some of them slightly, but it's going to be around f1.8 or f1.2 for most of these lenses because I don't want everything to be so ridiculously blurred out. You have a background for a reason, but, I want still a pleasing background separation. The 50mm does that very well. What I'm predicting you're going to notice in the footage is that this is a much sharper, much more clinical lens. You don't have as much of the crazy, background blur. It's just a kind of a more standard look versus kind of the interesting look that you get from the Helios, which is part of why I love the Helios. This is probably one of the lens setups that I'm least likely to go with just because it doesn't have the benefits of the Helios, but it still has the issue of being so far away, taking up so much space. And part of me is kind of looking for a little bit less of a standard clinical look, but definitely let me know what you think, if you like this lens or not. Let's check our flaring. So not too much flaring with the light like this. Now, if we turn it all the way up, that's definitely more controlled than the Helios was. We can turn it back down, put it back over here. Ooh, that's bright on me, man. That is so freaking bright. Holy freaking moly. Awesome. And I do also want to mention that I'm shooting all of this on the FX3. Normally I shoot my videos on the FX30 because it's smaller, it's generally easier, but for these lenses, especially if I'm going to end up using a longer focal length, the FX3 is going to make more sense to switch to for this kind of content creation. As I get to some of the last lenses, I'll have to switch over to the FX30 because they are APS-C lenses, not full frame, but I'll let you know when that is the case. You're probably not going to see that much of a difference in the image quality compared to the two because they're both fantastic cameras, but just want to let you know that. And with all that said, let's go ahead and jump to my next lens. Once again, I completely forgot that I was going to do the black Pro Mist filter. So now we've got that on there. We can see slight difference in that being just a little bit softer. Let's go ahead and put this guy in frame. Yeah, you can definitely see more of that softness in this. I bet we're going to get a lot more flaring. Yes, we definitely get a lot more flaring with the black Pro Mist. A little bit more of a soft look. And go ahead and put that back. And now we're ready to jump to our next lens. All right, now this is the Sigma Art 35mm, and we're starting to get into what's probably going to be a more realistic choice for me for my setups, because this is a wider lens, so I can have the camera closer to me. This time I did move the camera to kind of keep a similar type of, framing on my body. And, we've got like the camera, we've got all of this up here. We can still see our little salt lamp. And we can see me, but the camera's much closer. The angle's a little bit wider, 35mm versus 50mm. Some people prefer the 50mm look. Some people prefer the 35mm look. It's really a matter of taste here looking at it. I think I really do like the 35mm look for this type of shot. I think it's really nice and, fairly pleasing. It's, it is a little bit of a clinical lens. All of the Sigma Arts are very optically excellent. And, if you want something a little more interesting, a little more different, this lens is not going to be the one for you. But if you're okay with things being, fairly optically perfect, this might be a way to go. And let's go ahead and do our light test here. We can see there is a little bit of, haloing here. And we've definitely got a good amount of flare. I should mention that I have this at f1.4 to keep a nice background separation, because as you guys know, the tighter a focal length, the blurrier the background is, the more background separation you get, the more bokeh you get, if you've heard that word. And the wider a lens is, the less of that background separation you get. The science behind it, there are many videos going into that. For the sake of this video, f1.4, because I want that. So that does make a little bit of a difference to what we're getting with this light. Sorry guys, I'm probably blinding you with this light as I'm explaining that, but that should give you kind of a sense of what we're working with. So that's why we're still getting a nice amount of background blur with 35 over the 50 that was at f2, whereas this is f1.4. So let's go ahead and put the Pro Mist on, see what we're dealing with. All right, here is it with the black Pro Mist 1/4, and we can see a little bit of difference. I'm not seeing a ton of difference in our salt lamp here. We'll see if we notice it with this. Yeah, we definitely notice it with the light. Let's go ahead. Oops, he's not really totally in frame. So that's it off. And then even at the minimum, we can definitely see. And then, yeah, whoa, that's crazy. I'm going to go ahead and turn that down and put it up here so I'm not freaking blinding you guys. But that is what we are looking at. And you can definitely let me know what you think. But I think in general, I do like this 35 millimeter look. It's just a question of, do I like how clinical it is? Maybe I'll try and find like a 35 millimeter vintage lens for cheap and pick one up, because I do like that interesting kind of vintagey look. But we'll see once I get this on the computer what I think, what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing, and let's jump over to our next lens. So here's where I feel like things start getting interesting. This is the Viltrox 24 millimeter f1.8 at f1.8. So we're not at f1.4, we're at f1.8, and we're at 24 millimeters versus 35 millimeters, still on the FX3. And this is maybe more of what you're used to in my recent videos seeing, because a lot of times on the FX30, I'm using the 16 millimeter f1.4, which when you deal with the crop factor of the APS-C lens versus the APS-C sensor versus the full frame sensor, you're basically getting the same field of view and probably a very similar depth of field, because the f1.4, f1.8, a lot of math and sciencey stuff that I should really get into in another video. But if you're not familiar with all of that stuff, basically the main point is you're probably going to see a similar amount of background blur on a full frame at f1.8 24 millimeter to a 16 millimeter f1.4. Not exact, and we'll be switching camera systems, so you'll see that next after this lens, because this is the last full frame lens that I'm considering for this setup. But it's fairly pleasing. You'll probably notice the perspective is starting to change. My face shape has changed a little bit. Kind of the perspective is a little bit wider. It's a little weirder. Like the camera is much closer. I can reach out. I can touch the lens. Whereas the camera was, 6 or 7 feet away at the start, and then moved to, like roughly 3 feet. And then now it's within, arm's reach. So that is definitely a different look, a different feel. But let's go ahead and test our light, see what our light is doing. We don't see practically any flare, the light flaring up, and it's honestly, it's quite controlled. This lens controls it quite well. There's still some when you really blast it into the lens, but it's not ridiculous. And holy moly, let's get that turned down so my face is not crazy, but it's still kind of crazy. Come on now. So now let's go ahead and throw our Pro Mist filter on. All right, so here is it with the Pro Mist filter on. Again, I'm not seeing crazy much going on with the salt lamp. Let's go ahead and put our light here. Oh, come on now. There we go. We're definitely getting a little bit, and then the flare, obviously it increases. We know at this point what it's gonna do, and put that back there. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and switch camera systems. So we're going to have the FX30, which is the camera that you guys normally see on this channel for, my talking head kind of stuff. And we're going to be switching to the Sigma Contemporary f1.4, and then we've got one final lens after that. And here we are on the Sony FX30 with the Sigma Contemporary f1.4 at f1.4. This is the lens that if you've been watching my channel for, the last 6 months to a year, I can't even honestly remember when I started shooting with it, but it's been quite a while. You have probably seen this lens. And you'll notice that this is basically as close as I could get to the same framing as with the Viltrox 24mm. Any adjustments are just, slight adjustments from taking the camera on and off the tripod, but the tripod's in the same place, so the framing should basically be the same. You'll notice basically the exact same focal length. I'm going to look very similar in the frame, same kind of thing. I can still reach out and touch the camera. So basically this is going to get you what the 24mm got you if you have a crop sensor camera like the FX30, and you're really not going to see, I don't think, that much image quality difference. So let's just go ahead and get our light, see kind of what it's doing. Really not much flaring, fairly controlled, nothing crazy there. And let's go ahead then and get the Pro Mist on there. Here is the Pro Mist on it. This is again the 1.4, and let's go ahead, get our light in here. We can definitely see with the light, what that's doing. And our flare, more pronounced, nothing crazy here. Let's go ahead and put that back. I find this a solid lens because, again, you can have the camera within arm's reach. I can hit the record and the stop button very, very easily. I can see the monitor. I've got another monitor over there. But it's a nice compact setup. And, if you like this look, then this may be a great option, especially if you have an APS-C camera, even, something like the ZV-1 or, one of the A6000 models that are, much cheaper than the FX30, for example. Like, you can really get a good entry level kind of this look with an APS-C camera, and that might be if you're ready to upgrade from your phone for a YouTube type setup. This could be a great kit for you. I may still continue to use this kit after I do all of the comparisons. I will let you know at the very end of this video, after I've edited it all. I'll pop back up and let you know what I think ultimately I'm going to decide. But let's go ahead and jump to my final lens, which is a really interesting focal length. Here we are on our final lens, the Sony 11mm f1.8 at f1.8. This lens would be kind of equivalent to a 17mm on a full frame, which I don't have to compare, but as we can see, this is a very wide lens. I can reach out and touch it very, very easily. I don't even have to extend my arm fully. This lens is going to have a lot of distortion to it, so we can bring it up here and see kind of what it's doing. It's creating a very, My hat just literally hit my, see now, like I can get crazy close and this is like weird, crazy distortion. This looks weird. Really changes the face. But if you want it just like for a normal setup like this is the most compact. Like my tripod's literally hitting my leg. But you can see kind of an interesting what it's doing with kind of the distortion, how it works. But this is a look. This is a very stylized kind of look. And it's one that I feel like most people will either love or hate. And a lens like this is really good, like if you want to kind of do that vlogging kind of thing where you're not on a tripod and you want to walk around with the camera. This, for me, really would have two main uses. One, if I like this look and I want to keep things really tight, or there is the option of, you know, pulling back just a little bit like this, and suddenly I've got a shot that, you know, if I framed it up a little bit better, but for the sake of this, like if I wanted a shot where I can crop it vertically and still not be like crazy tight on me, that's very useful if you're somebody who creates content for TikTok, Instagram, you know, Facebook Reels, all that kind of stuff. And you also create content for YouTube and you want to multi-purpose it, but you don't have a lot of space in your studio. This could be a really good answer. Like I can still reach out and touch the lens, but I've got this crazy wide of a shot. And if you know, I want it to be more of that kind of same sort of framing that I've had in my other shots. Here we go. And again, very, very close. Like it's really not hard to even reach out and touch this lens. Let's go ahead and check out our light. You know, not really, honestly, any crazy flaring. It's just brightness. So this lens has quite controlled flaring. And then let's go ahead and jump to our Pro Mist. So here is our Pro Mist on it. I don't know if we're going to see too much crazy difference, but I'll be interested to see, you know, does it soften things up a little bit? While I've got it on here, let's go ahead and talk about something interesting, which is kind of like the psychology of different lens choices. The longer a focal length is, like the 50 millimeter, 58 millimeter, it's going to make you kind of feel more distant from your subject. It's kind of like a psychology thing. It's how we're wired. And as you move the focal lengths down, you know, 35 starts to feel a little bit closer. 16 millimeter, 24 millimeter starts to feel kind of like you're face to face, kind of like in a conversation with somebody. And then when you've got like this 11 millimeter, which again, like a 17 millimeter kind of equivalent on full frame, like it feels a little bit more close, like a little more intimate, like you're talking to somebody like in a very, very personal way. So depending on the type of content you're creating, that might be valuable to have a lens where, you know, you can lean in a little bit and still not be like so crazy in it, and it feels close and like you're engaged with your audience and you're having a very deep personal conversation with them. That's one of the things that I find so interesting about this lens that I forgot to mention. But let's go ahead and see. Obviously we are getting a little bit of flaring, almost no flaring, but then we definitely, that, you know, flaring, halation, all of that stuff pops in with our Pro Mist, which is cool. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this test and pop back up here and let you guys know what lens I think is going to be my primary shooting lens. Am I going to go with the FX3, with the Helios 58 millimeter, with the Sigma Art 50 millimeter, with the Sigma Art 35 millimeter, with the Viltrox 24, with the Sigma Contemporary 16, or with this Sony 11 millimeter. It's a few days later. Long story short, my apartment got flooded. It's been raining quite a lot the last few days. Got pretty crazy. You might even be able to hear a little bit of rain outside if the mic does not completely isolate that sound. But our big reveal is right now I'm using the Helios 44-2 58mm, which is one of the lenses that I thought was the least likely that I was actually going to use. But there's something about the look of it. And I ended up completely redoing my studio setup. And so we're going to see. We're going to try it for a few videos and see how you guys like it, how I like it, how I like living with this studio setup, and if it's worth it for the image quality. I've actually opted not to have the Pro Mist filter on right now because I feel like the Pro Mist filter just makes it, the look is almost too intense. It's already a soft lens. It's already got kind of that vintage look. It's already quite pleasing. That really just pushes the look more than I want for a talking head kind of video. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up. Let me know what your favorite lens was. Let me know what kind of studio setup you would like to have, and I'll catch you in the next video.